so I saw the Tolkien movie.
I was wondering over the weekend if you saw that.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of people commenting on it. And
Really, did you? I haven't seen any comments.
Oh, really? No, I've seen several reviews.
Okay.
And question marks.
Okay. Well, yeah. So it was what I thought it would be. I thought some of the dialogue was really enjoyable.
Oh, that's
I
good.
thought some of the friendship was really enjoyable. I thought the depiction of the mother, however brief. So he's Tolkien's an orphan.
Okay.
He lost his dad when he was 4, but it shows his mom, even though they're dirt poor, with him and his brothers, just really valuing education and the imagination.
Oh, okay.
And so she's very animated and sparking that moral imagination that would go into something like a Tolkien's mind
Okay. Yeah.
and fuel him. And honestly, it reminded me of my wife and the way she
Okay.
homeschooled our kids
Okay.
and my son.
Okay.
So that was beautiful. It was very slow moving. It was very ponderous, which I like.
Okay.
Other people would call it boring. I would say that's right up my alley.
Hey, hold it. I want everyone to write that down. I'm not boring. I'm ponderous.
Well, ponderous means boring. So slow moving, not a lot of action, a lot of dialogue. Okay, I'm down with all that because it's about words ultimately. And there's some interesting discussion about philology and linguistics, which I also really enjoyed.
Great.
The shots at Oxford, his interplay with one of the professors there, that I really, really liked. The effort to do something that's supposed to be biographical or a depiction of someone who's real, and then let's show the influences. What went in? It's a prequel to The Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. It builds up to that writing, so it's all about showing him World War One. So I also like that part, show all that stuff, showing the build up to what creates this art.
Yeah.
The primary motivator of Tolkien, according to Tolkien, is his Christianity.
Yeah.
So there is zero of that in the movie.
According to him. So this isn't other people. Yeah.
He was at Mass every day when he was a kid and a teenager. So what they had to do was basically invent a different character who wasn't motivated by that primarily. So that's dishonest.
What did they make his motivation then?
Well, just they tried to. Did you ever see Dead Poets Society? They had this catchphrase. It was "Carpe Diem." And it was for this group of guys who were a little bit slightly misfit, but really erudite and extremely poetic, and they're just great writers, right? So they clearly tried to borrow from that idea and create this group of friends, a fellowship, if you will, of guys that were inspiring to each other, but they didn't have that catchphrase. They had another one.
Okay.
But they were versed in Latin and versed in all that. Like, as somebody who's yearned for that kind of friendship, I really felt that. And for somebody who's yearned for that for my son, I've really felt that. So that to me was emotional. And I don't normally get emotional. And with that, I didn't cry, but I felt like it.
You cried.
No, I felt like it. I'm already sharing that I felt like it. So I think that's far enough.
That's enough. Okay, I'll take it.
So what they did was they made a really interesting guy less interesting and more like every recognizable hero of a story that Hollywood produces. And they gave us a guy who's attractive and wasn't nearly as awkward as I understand Tolkien to have been. And they also took the love story and made it more boring than it was in real life. Now imagine that. Usually what you try to do is try to make something, you try to elevate it to the next level of interest. Okay, we had to introduce this, make it a little more interesting. No, they made it more boring. Because what they did, he lived, and I've talked about this before, but he lived under a Catholic priest who told Tolkien's mom that he would take care of Tolkien and his brother.
Okay.
And he did faithfully. And Tolkien was so grateful to this Catholic priest that when he fell for this girl, when he was in high school, this girl Edith, also an orphan.
Oh, wow.
He loved her so much, but she wasn't Catholic. And this priest said, look, under my charge, I was entrusted by your mom. Under my charge, you are not to pursue this woman. Now, when you're 21, it's up to you. So that's what he told him. And so Tolkien gave him his word, and then he was stuck between all of these feelings that he had for this woman and the word that he had given this man who had sacrificially raised him and his brother. So he was in between. To me, that's really interesting.
That is.
What do you do?
Right.
Well, he's missing this girl. they clearly clicked. She's smart too. She loves him and his quirks. Again, they kind of miss that in the movie too, because he's not that quirky.
Okay. Well, yeah.
He's not quirky in the movie. He's much more social. And but in reality, he waited until he was 21, and on his birthday, he went full bore that day. Like I've got to, and she was engaged to another man. But when she got his letter, she chucked it. And said, "I've been waiting for you."
Oh, wow.
And then they got married.
They didn't do that in the movie? That's fantastic.
It is fantastic. No, what they did in the movie was made it so that they continued to have sort of this passionate love for each other.
And they're sneaking around kind of thing.
Kind of like, I know I'm not supposed to, but there was a little bit of that. Or he'd be going off to war, and he'd come sprinting back from the ship to give her a long kiss. And yeah, she's engaged, but... And then he's in the hospital, and she's waiting on him in the hospital after World War I. And the Catholic priest sees how wonderful she has been looking after him, and he realizes the error of his ways.
That's
like, you're right. She's a real gem. You know, I made a mistake. So love conquers the oppression that's from this religious figure.
What's sad is you drain it of what culture is currently drained of, which is the thought that there's no higher word other than your desire.
Exactly, bam, exactly.
Yeah.
So they couldn't commit that kind of cultural heresy.
No.
They just had to back off.
The God of this culture will not allow that type of story.
So he had to fit Tolkien, who's this prime example of understanding that's not what life is about. In fact, he writes this amazing story.
Right.
Epic fantasy story showing that. About this ring, the focus of desire that ultimately will destroy us unless there's something better.
Yeah.
So they decided to shoehorn him into, no. I mean, somebody could go, well, that's just kind of soft. They soft pedaled it. No, they just kind of ignored that. And to me, that's more romantic. His actual story and Edith's actual story and their next 60 years together is more romantic than what they showed in that movie.
But what I will say is, and this without seeing the movie, I do understand why you would go that route if you're going to take all of his faith out.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Right.
Because there is no greater word. So that would my desire would have to be the final word. If I'm going to take all of that out, then that story can't really make that much sense. So
the only expression really of faith in the movie is this priest being there, like existing. And then he's the voice of, you can't do this, and then I was wrong.
Got it.
So, you know, none of this is an accident. And some people be like, dude, just lighten up. Yeah, okay. Again, there are parts of the movie I really liked. That it's set in Oxford, that it's British. You know, they reference the Eagle and the Child. There's some in jokes to the Lord of the Rings. There's, I love all of
This is a character that you love, so
And I'm not an expert in Tolkien. There's people that are far more scholarly. But it's also true that if you would have shown him with his struggle to relate to people, especially in light of the fact that he's an orphan, like, doesn't know his dad, but then there's this Catholic priest that takes him in. Like, there's a whole lot of really good stuff here. You guys chose other stuff, and you went for the
low hanging fruit.
You went to boring. Change it back into every other story, and it was better. It was better. I love the way they wrapped it up. I won't give it a spoiler, but it was a sweet flourish.
Okay.
And I love the World War I reality that he was at the Battle of the Somme, which is this cataclysmic, apocalyptic battle of battles. And so the way they filmed it would show like why that turned into Mordor.
Okay.
Like where, from his vantage, when they're showing through his eyes, seeing the black silhouetted tree stumps that are cracked in half against the red sky with just smoke coming out, and then fire from the mouths of the dragons in his mind, but there was flamethrowers coming over the trench, and that's true, and that was World War I inspired The Hobbit.
Okay.
The Hobbit is the English soldier who doesn't know really why he's there, what he's doing. You know, he's just trying to mind his own business and raise some crops and have some sheep. And next thing he knows, he's tossed into Mordor. Like, yeah, that was all interesting. So I appreciated that touch. But yeah, you know, if you put God into things get more interesting. You take it out, it becomes again just about, how do I fulfill my desires? There's no conflict there. Not really.
No, there's no conflict. The conflict stops being about even good and evil, and it really what we're starting to make it is about authority, right, and autonomy.
Right. That's exactly right.
Right. So
That's
now
the conflict,
that's
right.
the conflict. Now this person is telling me what to do, and I'm going to live my truth. I'm going to do my
Right.
and that's just so boring and sad,
is.
and it has no connectivity to anything or anyone else but you.
Right.
And that's lonely and that's isolating.
Right.
And it's to the extent that that's become the crux. We probably sound like Waldorf and Statler.
No,
but
I hope not. I hope
Yeah.
but
I heard a comedian say, if I'm an old guy saying get off my lawn, yes, I'm an old guy saying get off my lawn, but you really do need to get off my
you
lawn.
need to get off my lawn. And honestly, if Tolkien were here, you think he would disagree with an iota what we're saying? I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
He knows this, and that was the whole point
Yeah.
of all of his writing. He's demonstrating that, and overtly in his own. He didn't want to write metaphor like Lewis did. He didn't like that, where it was a 1-to-1. There's Aslan, he's Jesus. He didn't want to do that.
Right.
He didn't like that. He was a snob about it. But like, he was overt about this is from my faith.
Yeah.
Clearly, it's all from that, all the way through. He was frustrated with. He was such a serious Catholic that he and Lewis almost disfellowshipped over Lewis' decision to marry Joy Davidman, who was divorced.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
And he was always frustrated that Lewis didn't become a Catholic. Like Lewis became a Christian because of their walks around Addison Walk, which they would have these walks there, and Lewis became a believer, but Lewis wouldn't go all the way with Catholicism.
Okay.
And that was a continuing issue for Tolkien. But he loved Lewis because Lewis was outgoing and ebullient and bubbly, and Tolkien was extremely loyal and quiet. And had to be drawn out.
Okay.
So in this movie, you don't see that.
You lose something there.
Yeah, especially for people like me that are looking for, just like with racial types, like you want to recognize something you like
Representation
represent
matters.
me. Yeah,
Yes,
like I want to
does.
see that.
Yes.
Like, okay, I recognize that. That's beautiful. Not everybody has to be like that,
Right.
but it's nice to see it represented. And so when you get your hopes up about something like that,
Yeah.
like come on, you drained it. One enthusiastic thumbs up. For
if you had 5 stars, what would you give it?
3 because I enjoyed the mise en scène, the setting, the lighting, the music.
That makes. I have a friend who is equally into Tolkien, and she's a English major, and she gave it 3 too for the exact same reasons.
I'll be darned.
Yeah, exact same reasons
I'll
you
be
said.
darned.
She was like, I can't pan it all together because it was so beautiful to see that
Okay.
and the touch points that she knows that were there. She just said, I can't believe you went out of your way. You had to go out of your way to take his faith out. And when you do that, the overall story doesn't make sense, and it robs those of us who were so into him.
It's a neat story.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful movie. It wasn't Tolkien.
Yeah.